Well, hello everyone, it's Dr. G here. Welcome to Marketing Strategy. What are we going to do today? I'd like to spend a few minutes to describe why marketing strategy is important and how it is not only aligned to business strategy, but often a very important element for any company creating a business strategy. So what do I mean by strategy? Well, I am a Minnesota Vikings fan. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And when I moved to another part of the United States, I brought my love of the Vikings with me. The one thing about the Vikings, though, is although they've always had a really great team, they are known for having great defenses and sometimes some really great quarterbacks, they often let me down. Since I've been alive, they've been to 2 Super Bowls and have never won them. But every year I get so excited because there's so much hype around these great Vikings, but for whatever reason they can't seem to get it over the finish line. So what does that mean for me? Well, I think about things like, what about the general manager? What are they doing? Does the owner of the team have the best players? What about the coaches? How can the coaches not coach these players to get over the finish line? And then finally, come on, get us a quarterback that's going to succeed game after game. So think about strategy as all of those parts and pieces playing together to have a really great offense to be able to take your business strategy over the finish line. So I'll stop talking about my sob story about the Minnesota Vikings never quite making it over the finish line, but one day in my lifetime, I'm sure they will. So how do we define strategy? If you look at the definition of strategy straight out of the dictionary, it will tell you that it's a plan of action or policy designed to achieve a major overall aim. So the strategy is, how are we going to make our goals? How are we going to reach at what we are set out to accomplish to do? It's as simple as that. So where does strategy come from? Strategy has come from, who really knows how long it's been around. But many people will tell you that the king of strategy is Sun Tzu. And Sun Tzu was a Chinese military person, strategist, who created a manifesto called The Art of War. And the manifesto has many tenets in it on what you need to do to win the long haul or win the war. And those types of things could be preparing, having good research, making sure your employees or military personnel are aligned, and that everyone knows the end goal. But what Sun Tzu, one of his most favorite quotes from the book, is that every battle is won before it is ever fought. So this is the most basic principle of strategy. You have to have a good plan of action before you ever go further to take on your big goal. So let me give you a little story here. You may or may not have heard about this, but if you are familiar with British royalty, you're familiar with perhaps this picture here. With, maybe you could guess. I'll give you a moment to guess. What do you think this is? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Buckingham Palace. Buckingham Palace is one of the residences of the Queen and the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth. And there's a story about when Queen Elizabeth was, I believe this was in the mid-80s, forgive me if I'm wrong, but you'll get the gist of what I'm trying to say here. So there's a story about Queen Elizabeth, and she happened to be in her bedroom quarters in Buckingham Palace one night, and she was probably doing what queens do, thinking about what they're going to do for the day, or what she had done throughout the day, maybe scribing a little, I don't think she'd be writing an email at that time or doing any texting, but she was probably taking some notes in a journal. Well, all of a sudden, an intruder entered her bedroom. And she was just sitting at her little table there doing her thing. And the intruder, she was a little bit taken aback. I mean, who wouldn't be when you got somebody strange coming into your house, not let alone your bedroom? And what do you think Queen Elizabeth did when she saw the strange man in her room? Do you think she picked up her little bell and twanged it? Do you think she pushed the secret security button they may have had there? Do you think she yelled, hello, help, help, help? What Queen Elizabeth ended up doing, she asked the gentleman to sit down and have a cup of tea with her and to listen her out. And so there's this long story about this interaction between the intruder and Queen Elizabeth, and she actually sat and listened to him, but she ordered some tea. And when the tea came, obviously, the people coming to rescue her knew that there was an intruder in her room. Why is she ordering tea for two when she's alone? So that said, if you think about the plan that Queen Elizabeth put into place for her objective of, I gotta get this guy out of here because I don't know if he's a lunatic or what, but my goal is to be safe and sound and get this guy out of here as soon as possible. So you can watch documentaries on Queen Elizabeth and see how that all panned out, but it did pan out for her. They were able to get the guy out. I think in the long run, she probably had a lot of respect for this man, maybe not his approach, but some of his ideas. So in that case, she had a really good sound strategy of how she was going to handle such an attack. Perhaps. It wasn't an attack in this case, but an odd situation. So that's really high-level strategy. So what does this have to do with marketing, right? This is probably what you're thinking. Well, marketing strategy is the decisions and the actions focused on building a sustainable differential advantage relative to our competitors in the minds of our customers to create value for stakeholders. Yeah, that's a mouthful. I get that. That's the author of the text, long but very good definition of what marketing strategy does. So here's kind of how I look at it. So as business people, particularly marketers, what do we own as marketers? We own the customer. It is our responsibility to ensure that our customers see value in our offerings. We have to be different from everyone else, and that's not an easy thing to do. And even if we get customers in the door for one sale, or even two sales or three sales, our mission is to keep them happy for the long haul. And we do that by understanding who they are, how they differ, and what value we create for them. And not only the value for our consumers, but without a customer, there's no product, there's no service, there's no revenue. And we need revenue and profit for our stakeholders. So that's our job. And trust me, it's a big job. It's the most important thing that you will ever do in marketing is develop that sound strategy, that long-term plan to get you and your firm over that finish line and keeping them strong and profitable and growing throughout the life of the product or the life of the firm. Okay, so I want you to do a little something for me now. Maybe, I'm guessing, you have one of these, a cell phone, a mobile phone, whatever you want to call it, an Apple phone, a Droid phone, your phone. Your phone. As we all know, these particular things are really important to us, right? Now what I want you to do, and I'll give you a few seconds, I want you to find the nearest person next to you. It could be in the room, in your classroom. If you're at home watching virtually, it could be somebody in your house. I want you to take your phone, unlock it, hand it to the person on your right, or go give it to somebody in your household closest to you. I'm going to give you a few seconds to do this. No cheating. You have to unlock the phone. You have to give it to them. Hand it over. Okay. Now, you shouldn't have your cell phone with you. Perhaps you have somebody else's cell phone. How does that feel? How does it feel to take the one item that's closest to you and give it to a stranger? We all know what's on this thing, right? Bunch of personal information, who you text last, your social media accounts, your wallet. It's pretty uncomfortable, right? Giving that phone to somebody else. Okay, you can get it back. Generally, if I were in front of you right now, it's interesting how the volume increases exponentially. All of a sudden you go from being very quiet to really loud, really loud. Okay, so why did I do this crazy exercise with you? Here's why. I'm guessing you may have heard of a little company called Airbnb. Well, the reason why I call it little, they're not little now, but they did start out little. And you may or may not know the story of Airbnb. So Airbnb was founded in 2007 by two gentlemen, Brian Chasky and Joe Gibbia. And these two gentlemen were from New York. They moved to San Francisco. So if you know anything about San Francisco, well, similar to New York, the cost of living is very expensive. So these two guys, they were having a trouble paying rent. And they took advantage. They thought, well, we know there's this big conference coming into town. I believe it was a design conference, and these guys were designers. There was a big conference coming to town, and they thought, well, maybe we can make some money off of getting a couple air mattresses and renting out some space in our house. So they did that, and they named their company. They did this a couple times. They were able to rent out space on these air mattresses in their apartment. And what happened was that they thought this was kind of a neat thing, and they said, well, I bet there's lots of people like us, or other people at times would like to maybe rent out a room in their home, or maybe some space. So hence was the idea of Airbnb, which now in 2020 or late 2020, they were valued at $3.5 billion. So you might think, yeah, this is a great story. What does this have to do with strategy? Well, if you think about it, remember the feeling you had when you opened up that cell phone and you gave it to your neighbor? You're kind of going, oh, yuck. I'm going to know everything about me. Well, what if you were a customer wanting to rent a room from somebody sight unseen? Don't you kind of wonder about, get that same sort of feeling of unease? Maybe you would. What about if you are an owner of somebody with an extra room that you're renting out and you don't quite know who's going to show up at my house? Am I going to feel like Queen Elizabeth and all of a sudden have an intruder there? You might feel that way. So one of the hurdles that Airbnb had to deal with is marketing strategy. How are they going to make the homeowners feel comfortable with people coming into their house? And how are they going to get prospective customers feeling okay about the room they're going to rent? So in this case, what they had to do from a marketing strategy perspective to grow their business was something small called photography. And you might think, well, yeah, duh. But back then, think of this. So they launched in 2007. They had very, very few customers here. So these are the millions of customers. And then right about here, they're going, well, how are we're starting to grow, but we're not growing fast enough. We need to diffuse our product, which we will talk about product diffusion in this class. We want to increase that curve of number of customers utilizing our business. And how do we do this? So they did research and they asked people, consumers, are you willing to rent a room? And many said yes. And then they said, well, what do you need to do to feel confident? Well, I got to see a picture of the place. So an initiative that Airbnb did from a marketing perspective to drive customers, which drives revenue, is to teach the homeowners how to market their product through product pricing, through photography, and other types of elements that they have in their marketing mix. So that's just one example of marketing strategy. So let's look at the difference between corporate strategy and marketing strategy. So corporate strategy is that big umbrella, the firm's biggie goals that they're trying to accomplish. And a business strategy is their long-term plan of action based on the goals and objectives that they create. So long-term could be anything from 3 to 5 years or even longer. But they put together a business strategy document that they march towards so that they have a roadmap to success. It is their game plan. It is like what the Minnesota Vikings should be doing. It's their game plan. How are we going to win over the long haul? How are we going to achieve our desired goals? The roadmap, the game plan to get to the goals and objectives. So as thinking about that, I want you to take a second to look at some of the most renowned companies in the world. What do you think some of their corporate strategies are? Take Apple, for example, or Tesla. Two tech companies, very different product sets, but what do you think their overall goals and objectives are? What about 3M? 3M is a local company in Minneapolis, and one of 3M's corporate strategies is that they are constantly innovated. And I think if you look at each of these companies, you might think they're innovators. Maybe one of their corporate goals is to drive innovation, new product development. Maybe a corporate goal for success is something around their employees, or maybe entering a new market. So corporate strategies help you achieve that long-term goal. So these are for-profit companies. What about not-for-profit companies? Tom's corporate strategy is 1-for-1. So their main strategy may not be just driving revenue, it is giving back. So for every shoe we sell, we are going to give a shoe to someone who cannot afford it. Bombas, the sock company, is very similar. Buy a sock, give a sock. Newman's Own, not-for-profit. So you could have corporations or not-for-profit organizations who have very different strategies. But at the end of the day, what we really need to do once we have those overarching goals is what are the strategies that we need to do to get there? So how do you go about figuring out what a market strategy, what strategies are for companies? One of the things that you're going to do in this class that I think is interesting for you to learn is to dig into the company's financial results. Go to apple.com, go to their news feed, go to their About Us section, and figure out what their strategies are. An easy way to do this is to look at, here we've got, I went right to the Apple Apple Store. I went right to the apple.com. I looked at their first quarter results for what did we have here? January 27th of 2021, really recent here. Gosh, what happened to Apple in 2020? We all know that 2020 wasn't the best year for business, but bam, 21% and earnings per share up 35%, an all-time record. So you might be thinking to yourself, how the heck did Apple do this in the middle of a pandemic? So let's try to define their strategies. So if you read through just the first couple of paragraphs in any financial statement, there will be a nod to what the strategy is here. So CEO Tim Cook is telling us that the reason we were so successful in 2020 is that every team member in Apple worked tirelessly in innovative work. They never gave up. So they're saying employees are one of our strategies. Cutting edge products that allowed us to deliver across a historic holiday season. Historic meaning many of us didn't have money to even buy holiday gifts. But so they had a strategy around, in the middle of a pandemic, how are we going to meet our holiday objectives? Thirdly, they are noting through the efforts of our Racial Equality and Justice Initiative. So not only are they talking about strategies to meet revenue, they're talking about strategies for the value of their company. In this case, making an effort to seek racial equality and social justice. So that's what I want you to start thinking about when you're looking at various companies and trying to identify what their business strategies are. It's going to be front and center in any annual report, in any financial statement. You are going to be able to see what their strategies are. So again, that's big corporate strategy. Marketing strategy aligns to corporate strategy. And I have to tell you, if strategy isn't run by marketing, they need to have a very important seat at the table. Because remember what I said? Marketing owns customer experience. Without a customer, it doesn't matter how successful you are in building products or building them in a way that's less expensive or cost effective. So what we do as marketers is we create our game plan based on those high-level business objectives on building a sustainable differential advantage. We always have to look at the competitive landscape, and we need to know how we measure up to them, and we need to impact the mind of the buyer and create value. Our job is to create value. So how do we create value? Think about Disney. If you're a fan of Disney, what sort of value does Disney create for their customers? Take a minute to think about that. Do they create value through creative experiences or making people feel happy or giving you a wide variety of Disney movies or giving you an entertainment experience? So Disney creates values in a creative, unique way to entertain you, to make you happy. For those of you who live in Utah, you may be familiar with a store, a grocer called Harmon's. And if you've ever shopped at Harmon's, you will understand that a unique value of Harmon's is that when you walk in there, you know you're in a Harmon's because of the vibe, of how lovely their selection is, their organic section, it's beautifully appointed, and their customer service is untouchable. They create value through building relationships with people. What about H&M? If you happen to be somebody into fast fashion, is what we call the industry of H&M creates value by watching fashion trends and inexpensively building clothes to meet the needs of people who want to be fashion forward at a reasonable price. So these are how companies create values. And as marketers, we create offerings. We work on branding. We make sure we target the right audiences and have the right customers. And we make sure that we have a marketing mix, product, promotion, pricing, and distribution channel to create value for the audiences that we care about. It's also important for us to create value for our stakeholders, so we cannot forget how we do that. So let's look at this. So if we are marketers, we control a lot of things. First of all, we may have a strategic objective to grow market size. And that means selling our products and services perhaps in different geographies. We want to have the largest percentage of customers in a particular geography. And we do that by driving market demand. We attempt to grow market share, having better products and services than our competitors. We want to create loyal customers like me with Harmon's, keep going back every week for my groceries, and we want to make sure that we are competitively taking customers away from our others. So we've got the market demand, meaning how many customers are out there that we can attract to our business. And then our firm's market size is how much of that demand do we have? And then we have another lever that we pull is pricing. So if we have a certain percentage of the market of customers that use our products and services, we also leverage pricing to finally equate to the sales revenue. So sales revenue is market demand. What is the overall size of the market? The firm's market share, how many of those customers or how much of that revenue are we getting compared to our competitors, and how are we pricing it? Are we pricing it low or high or comparable? That's how we derive revenue. And now if we look at a margin perspective, gross margin is also very much part of the marketing responsibility, in that depending on what we sell price our products for and how much we spend on creating that product or service and bringing that product to service to market through distribution channels and promotion. So our job for the stakeholders is to keep our costs low enough so that our margins remain high. So not only are we making the customers happy, we have to do our part, which is a very important part to keep our financial stakeholders' long-term performance excellent. So why do we do this? So I've mentioned this before. I want you to walk away with it is our responsibility as marketers to drive value for the customer while also doing it in a financially responsible way for financial success for the firm. And throughout this course, we are going to do this by looking at 4 principles that come from your textbook. All customers differ, meaning we are individual consumers and we make different choices based on our differences. Once you land us, we always have to know that we're constantly changing as people, and those changes are something we need to be aware of and react to. We know that regardless of how great a service or a product you have, you are always going to have competitors react to your strategic moves. So remember, we always have to plan. And we have to be prepared with all of those different external factors that come our way, including our competitors. And finally, resources are limited. There is only so much time and money and opportunity. So we have to also look at what are the trade-offs that we have to make in terms of our marketing strategy. So these are the 4 elements that you're going to be working with and learning about in the text. So those 4 principles are very important. And what we are going to do throughout the class is I am going to take those principles and have you break into groups. You'll be working on the same team throughout the course, and you are going to work in a team on a publicly traded company that you select. And what we're going to do is we're going to have 5 what I call strategic marketing decisions that you're going to work on throughout the semester. The first thing you're going to do is analyze the firm's position through a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and what we call a 3C analysis. So you're going to look at the overall landscape and what the greatness and the opportunities and some of the threats that that your firm has. So that's the first thing you're going to do, is analyze the landscape. The second thing is you're going to develop an acquisition, expansion, and retention strategy. So not only are you going to acquire customers, you're going to figure out how you're going to grow revenue, get cross-sell from them, and then how you're going to retain them to make sure they don't jump ship when the next best widget comes around. Then we're going to audit the brand. Branding is so important for firms. You're going to do a brand analysis on your firm, and you are going to recommend some strategies based on some really tricky scenarios that I'm going to give to you that might disrupt some of your plans. Finally, you're going to create a disruptive offering, something new and innovative for your client or your firm you're working with, doing a blue ocean analysis. And then lastly, you're going to put it all together and analyze trade-offs to recommend allocations for an overall marketing mix or marketing strategy. So this is what you can expect from the course. So hopefully you've got a chance to understand what strategy is, how marketing strategy differs but aligns, how important it is for us as marketers to always be able to focus on that customer and understand that it is our responsibility to create value for them over the long haul. So I'm looking forward to the next rest of the semester that we have together, so that we can learn these great marketing strategy initiatives and even if you're not a marketer, how we align to the overall business strategy to make our firm successful. So I hope you have a great day, and it's been really wonderful chatting with you. Take care.